Welcome everyone to today's episode of Mortgage Monday, where we are going to sell you on the get rich quick scheme that everybody can follow to become an ultra immediate millionaire. That's easy, that is not stressful, and that you should have done yesterday. All this information is yours for the low price of $50,000. Oh shoot, I wasn't supposed to say that out loud. I was supposed to just imply that. If you're tired of hearing stuff like that, I highly recommend that you check out my new book, Pillars of Wealth: How to Make, Save, and Invest Your Money to Achieve Financial Freedom. That's right, Christian, did you know that I wrote a book?
I've actually been reading a couple, and I feel like you should check them out. I feel like they'd be good motivations. The BRRRR strategy, long distance real estate investing. There's a couple books for realtors that I thought have been really good. Have you heard of those ones?
I have heard of those, but I was hoping for something a little bit more like get rich quickie. Do you have anything you could recommend on crypto courses or multi-level marketing perhaps?
Unfortunately, I'm all out of NFTs. Fresh out, hot off the press, I'm sorry.
Well, we'll have to see what we can do about that. I'm David Green. This is Christian Bachelder, the broker and my partner in the One Brokerage. And today we have a surprise for you. We are bringing on one of our employees, Ricky, who works for the One Brokerage. And at the young age of 25 is the top employee in our company, is crushing it because he has pursued the path of offense. That's right. In the Pillars book, I focus on defense, offense, and investing. There is a strategy to being good at saving money, a strategy to getting good at making money, and obviously strategies to get good at investing money. Ricky is a great example of what it looks like when you embrace the skills required to get better at making money, and he's crushing it. And we're going to be talking with everyone today about what goes on behind the curtain and what a career as a loan officer actually looks like. Ricky, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, guys. Great to be here.
Yeah, you look fantastic. First off, your hair is great. Christian, you as well. That's one of the perks of working at the One Brokerage is we have a hair and makeup person that shows up before anybody does recording, gets everybody looking well. I save us quite a bit of money on that myself. Obviously, they don't have to spend a lot of time on my hair.
The downside is you set a hell of a bar for hair quality, though. That's the rough part, man. We all got you have big shoes to fill there.
Christian hates when I say this, but a bad day with a shaved head is better than a good day with a man bun. And if you want to know what I'm talking about, make sure you're following us on YouTube and you'll see exactly where that is. So, Christian, I'm going to turn it over to you. But Ricky, before we do that, why don't you just tell us briefly who you are, how we met, and what you do?
Yeah, we met because I was consistently stalking you at all of the events that you were hosting. And, I just continued to try to stay around you and be in the space until finally you were happy enough to say, yes, why don't you come onto the dark side? And we've been to the dark side ever since.
I love that. Well, here, let me jump in, Ricky, for audience members that may not be aware, why don't you explain to us a little bit just what you do, what a day in the life of a loan officer looks like?
Consistently picking up the phone 24/7. I would say that if I'm not on the phone, then I'm doing something else within my emails. But I would say for the most part, it's speaking to people 24/7. I think you can scroll through my call log and probably see a couple hundred phone calls that happen on a consistent basis. And outside of that, I would say putting out high level fires. I mean, for the most part now in my day-to-day, it's communicating with realtors that we have deals in contract for currently, communicating with clients, communicating with my team, not so much on the back end with my banks as much, but more so just with the team and the clients and making sure everybody's on the same page. We're keeping our realtors up to date. And if we need to request extensions or if we need to have conversations about what's going on in the contract, that's kind of where I come in for the most part, or onboarding new people too.
Quick question. I guess just in the beginning of this, just for the general well-being of our audience here, what do you really look for? What goes into the approval process, right? What do you look for maybe a good client, or what should a good client look for in a good loan officer? How does that fuse? What's the mesh there?
I think that because of the fact that we were such an investment focused company, it's hard to be on a team like this and for myself to not also be an investor, right? So I look at it through an investor's point of view a lot of the times. And what do investors look for? They want to see, how can I get a loan program that's going to get me the best terms, but also the lowest down payment and the lowest out of pocket, right? So when I'm looking at it, I'm thinking creatively in that aspect, but I'm also asking and figuring out if my client wants to scale their portfolio long term and they want to build wealth through real estate, how are we going to get them to that point? That's going to allow them to continue to recirculate their capital, because I think at least in real estate, particularly, capital preservation is probably the number one thing. So
yeah, right in line with David's book coming out, right? That's one of the the pillars, no pun intended there. Right?
Yeah, that's a big point. Here's one of the reasons that I felt like this was something that needed to be shared with the world and why I think people need to read this book. When we all three who have access to wealthy people, because we're doing a lot of their loans, when we look at them, very rarely do we come across anybody with a big portfolio of real estate or a good portfolio of real estate that doesn't have cash. It is sexy to tell people, oh, you don't need money to buy real estate. You could just go do this. And like, it's true. You can climb a mountain without a belay. You can jump out of a plane and build your parachute on the way down, I suppose, but it's not wise and very few people actually pull that off. The people that we see that are good at owning real estate are also good with money. They have big bank accounts. They have more money coming in than going out. We know what it's like to work with that client that the 3.5% down represents 90% of their total cash, and they're terrified the whole time and they don't want to move forward, versus a person with tons of disposable income is like, yeah, if some things go wrong, it's okay. I'll make it back somewhere else, or I'll make it back later. So my thought is, if you want people to take action with real estate, the best thing you can do is show them how to get better with money, how to keep the money that you made, and how to make more money. And Ricardo, you're obviously a good example of somebody who's making more money because you excelled in the industry. And I had you on my mind a lot when I was writing the offensive section of the book as far as the personal growth and what people can do. But if you're listening to this, I really just want to tell you, first off, I'm sorry if no one's told you this before, but the reality is real estate takes money to make money. It takes money as down payments. It takes money to fix things that break. You go through periods where you have vacancy or your tenants leave and you have to go turn the house, or your insurance premium skyrockets. We're all seeing that. Things happen. You want to have some money set aside for when that goes down, because things rarely work out like what we assume they will.
Yeah, that's 100% right. And kind of a layup, pivoting onto that, especially talking about how ways can be, people can achieve more financial freedom, maybe work in an industry they're, interested in. Ricky's a really good example of this, right? Ricky, how has being a lender, kind of operating in this loan officer space, learning how these products work, learning how creative scenarios work, how has that helped you actually scale, now pivoting away from your job as a real estate investor?
I think it's a total hack, mainly because I think in order to scale, you need the financing. It's the most important piece. It's the most overlooked because people don't want to take the time to talk to their lender and deal with all the paperwork that we need to gather. But, being on the back end, I don't even like going to collect all of my mortgage statements and my bank statements and everything that I need to put together for my own file. So I completely understand it from my client's point of view, but I think it's allowed for me to get to the position where I'm at now with 4 properties in a short time frame, 3 of which I purchased in 1 year. That wouldn't have been possible if I didn't know the loan programs that were available, listening to platforms like BiggerPockets and absorbing the knowledge, but also being in the industry and actually doing what we're preaching.
And not to put Ricky's business out there for everybody, but I will say this. Ricky, in the last several months, has made more money himself than what the entire company, Christian and I, the owners of the company, have made. So there's a lot of people I see that complain about splits. They want a split system that favors them instead of asking like, what's the most value and what's going to put me in the position to succeed the most? Because even though like on paper, we would have a better split system on our end, Ricky doesn't have any expenses. He gets a whole lot of support. He's able to just rip through these loans and do them as efficiently as possible. And that ends up making him much more money than the loan officers that went to the brokerage that had a better split system, but they're taking applications on paper. They're doing all their own work. They're not getting any kind of training. They're not having any leads that are coming in. So it's just another thing to think about. It's how much money you make, not the split. Just like with interest rates, everybody's obsessed with that right now. What's the rate? It's how much money the real estate makes that makes more sense than what the interest rate is.
100%. Yeah, I couldn't agree more myself. Speaking as both the broker now, as well as somebody who has been on the loan officer and even the real estate side, that's not the only thing, right? You have to balance, okay, obviously you need to make money. The splits need to be, understandable, but what's the value you get for that split you're paid, right? If the broker just leaves you alone and here you go, you're taking paper applications and talking to whoever you can con into a phone call with you, okay? Or is there a system that we have built that can actually walk you through, provide support, guidance, training, right? That's what you should be getting from your brokerages, right? On that topic, since we determined it's not the hardest part of your job to take paper applications, which is probably your buddy's story, what do you think the hardest part of your job is on your day-to-day, Ricky?
I think that one of the most difficult things that I see is just reframing the way that people think about the mortgage industry. It's probably one. The second thing I'll say is having them filter through the fluff. With social media and everybody who talks about financing and everything that we, in general, that people consume as content, it's tough to figure out what's going to be the right option for me. And they have this burden of thinking that they need to take care of it themselves.
I see that a lot. We talk about it on the podcast all the time. You need the right team members that are good at what they do. You don't need to learn every in and out of a loan guideline. You just have to tell the loan officer, here's my challenges, here's what I want to do, and let them go figure it out. I think a lot of people burn energy asking too many questions. What do you think that comes from, Ricky? Is it a lack of trust? Is it because they think they're supposed to learn everything? What do you think motivates people to focus on the wrong things?
I think it's just them feeling like they have to do it themselves and that they need to learn it all, right? But when you go to the doctor, you're not asking the doctor how they're going to do the surgery, right? I think that's the great way to look at it because, we're here as the problem solvers. You bring me the problem, we're going to dissect it. We're going to figure out what the best path forward is, as long as it's aligned with what your goals are. And as long as we have a good understanding of what that looks like.
I think a really good general rule here, just for anybody listening, if you're listening to this, if you're listening to the BiggerPockets podcast, if you're listening to The Money, The Rookie, whatever it is, if the person that you're listening to is doing it themselves or holding a license to provide that service, that's good advice, right? There's a lot of people, there's influencers, people on Instagram, there's every agent that you know out there that may put a post out there about mortgages. If they're licensed and that is their business, they should be in a position to advise you, right? And if they're actually doing volume and representing clients well, good reviews, yada, yada. Just be careful. When you get advice and guidance on here's how you buy with no money down, and here's how you lie to your bank, and here's how you do all these things, it gets you into a position where you're building on a very unstable foundation. And just like with real estate, right? The biggest expense, those of you who have been unfortunate enough to go through it, the biggest expense, the worst thing that can happen to a property is foundation issues, right? It completely corrodes the strength of the house otherwise. You don't want to build, if you're really serious about growing and building a portfolio, you don't want it to be on an unstable, whether it's advice, guidance, or knowledge that you feel you obtained from a source that may not be credible. Just make sure, myself is licensed, Ricky's licensed, David's licensed, right? If your business is providing the service, if I mess up and tell you something wrong, my license could be canceled and my business is now gone, right? I don't have a W-2 where I guarantee that I can have employment. I have to maintain my license and I have to go through a compliance check, right? So if somebody's operating their business with integrity, that's going to bleed into the advice and guidance they give to their borrowers, right? And I know Ricky, owns that. David, you own that. We try to own that as much on podcasts and everything. But just when you get into general guidance that is just out there on Instagram and how easy access is to every sneaky and hack and everything that's got going on now, just be careful. That's my greater advice.
Ricky, if I was a fly on the wall in your office, tell me what time I would see you show up, what you'd be doing all day, and what time you'd leave.
I'd say my day starts around 6 a.m. for me going to the gym. But by the time I'm already working, even when I'm at the gym, if I have my East Coast clients that are calling me or texting me or realtors, I'm in my office ideally by around 8:30 or 9. Normally it's meetings, it's phone calls. Very rarely, I would say, do I have time when I'm not on the phone. Maybe, a couple minutes to eat, and then off my computer, ideally by like 9:30 or 10.
Now, I've seen you do this, and one of the things I think is very impressive is you're able to maintain a calm demeanor with that 12-hour or longer workday. And it's not just 12 hours of working, it's 12 hours of talking. That can be hard. A lot of human communication. You can't snap at them. You can't show that you're irritated because that client doesn't care that you had a bunch of other clients. They want to feel like they're your only one. What are some techniques that you've learned that have caused you to be able to maintain that pace and still be in a relatively good mood when talking to people?
Just taking a breath before I click the next dial. Taking a second to breathe a little bit right before, because it's easy for me to be back to back, but I think I've just done it so many times for consistently in the last couple of years that it's like natural to me now. For most people, I would say you should push that barrier slowly, right? You can't just jump into a 14-hour work day because you're going to be exhausted. But if you add an hour, once a week or once a month and you kind of snowball it, you can do it. Ideally, I want to be off my calls by 7 because a lot of the times between 7 and 10, I'm just getting all of the work done that I wasn't able to do when I was on calls.
I like that. I think that's a lot of very good points, and it can get overwhelming for sure. And on the topic of speaking to clients, so our listeners can hear this, what are the best qualities? What's the best client you can have? What's the person that if you could just build the perfect person to work with and for, who does that look like in your mind?
I think that's an awesome question. I think a lot of people would jump straight into thinking it has to deal with having a large sum of money ready to deploy towards properties. And that's not the case at all. I would say the number one thing is being coachable. Because if you want to work with us, particularly, we are going to be here to help you guide properties, right? I have clients who've bought 15, 16, 17 properties with us back to back in over years that we've helped them build their portfolio. And I've seen that wealth accumulated. So you don't need to own real estate. You just have to be coachable enough to know that we're going to guide you in the right direction, as long as that's the direction that you want to go in.
once again, on that topic, what would you say are mistakes, right? Now we have this ideal persona that this client embodies. What mistakes can they avoid, whether it's in searching for a loan officer or during the loan pursuit process? What mistakes do you see being made a lot that you wish people would be more knowledgeable about?
I would say that number one is that you're still trying to build a relationship at the end of the day with the person who's going to help you get to the destination that you're trying to get to. It's not necessarily about the best interest rate, which is a lot of people would come into it, especially in a market like right now, where we're focused on what's the best interest rate. But aside from getting the best interest rate, you want to make sure that you're being helped in the direction that you actually want to go in by that other person. And if you're not communicating that, then it's going to be difficult for that other person to make sure that that's coming across.
And I know we're getting short on time here, but just to kind of bring this home, kind of a big question that I know is going to be flooding that everybody's wants to know. From your insider look, programs, options, unique situations that you wish more, whether it's first-time home buyers, people buying their 50th home, what product do you wish people knew more about?
I would say there's two programs that I think people need to learn about. The first one and the simplest one, because before I got in here, this was literally the conversation I was having. You don't need to put 20% down to buy a house. I don't know how many times I have to say that, but I wish that everybody would know if you're a first-time home buyer, you can get in with 3% down as your minimum. And in a market like right now, I have clients who are getting seller credits that they're coming in with just their down. So that's the first one. The second one that just recently came out that not a lot of people know about is a conventional loan where you can actually tie in all of the energy efficiency pieces of the property that you want to add in. It's similar to a 203K loan where you're getting renovations tied in, but you're going to be getting the pieces that are going to make the home more energy efficient. And that can literally be anything. That can be solar, that can be appliances, that can be doors, that can be windows, and it still falls under a traditional loan. The bank actually wraps it into the financing. So if you're going to be getting, let's say, you're looking at $700,000 properties, you can now shop for homes in the $600 to $650 range where you're going to have a lower monthly payment and tie in the financing to have brand new appliances and solar in your house, whereas you might have paid that $700K just to get those things. So I think we're going to see a big movement in the energy efficiency space with those kind of loan programs. And it's something that just recently started to roll out.
That's very cool. I dig that. And that's something that so many people are doing anyways, right? People are paying that out of pocket or throwing it on 28% interest rate credit cards, right? Getting that tied into your mortgage is a massively powerful tool for people looking to accomplish that.
Now, if you're listening to this and you're thinking, I want to be Ricky, I want to be Christian, I want to have a better life and I want less stress and I want to make more money and I want to invest in more real estate, you can't. Just check out BiggerPockets.com/pillars where you can register to get the book. It's not rocket science, but if nobody tells you this, you're going to just struggle and blame yourself. It comes out of 3 pillars: defense, and we talk a lot about budgeting and how you save money and ways that you exercise self-control; offense, how personal growth and improvement will lead to making more money, and there's specific chapters on the areas of your life that need to grow; and then investing, which everybody already loves if you're hearing us here on the BiggerPockets Network. Thanks again, Ricky and Christian. We'll start with you, Ricky. Where can people find out more about you if they want to learn about these loan products or they just want to ask you questions?
Yeah, you guys can email me. It's Ricardo at the One Brokerage. You can also find me on Instagram, Richie the Lender, RICHI.
There you go. Christian, how about you?
Yeah, me, Christian at theonebrokerage.com. We have the same domain, believe it or not. And our website's theonebrokerage.com. And I'm on social medias under The One Broker.
There you go. I am at DavidGreen24, or you can visit DavidGreen24.com or SpartanLeague.com to learn more about me. And do please make sure you check out Pillars. If you pre-order the book, there are some bonuses that you'll be eligible for as long as you get it before October 17th. There is a 4-part series of live coaching calls with me that you'll be eligible to attend. There is the cake recipe, which are the ingredients that need to go into everybody's wealth building cake. The Pillars of Wealth worksheet that you can use to follow and make sure that you're staying on course. You'll also be entered to win a one-on-one coaching call with yours truly, where I can analyze your personal financial situation and give you advice on the next step. So do go look into this book. I really think that it's going to change the game and create a whole new movement in the world of personal finance that is desperately needed in response to all the gurus that are selling a dream without telling you what it takes to get there. So Ricky, thanks for working with us. Christian, thanks for being my partner. And you listening to this, thank you for following us here on BiggerPockets. Keep pursuing your goals. Don't give up. It's going to happen if you stick with it. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you on the next one.